What's up, everybody? It's JDew and Jonah, the banking bros, here at the Cash Compound with another banking book report. And this time, Jonah, tell them what it's all about.
Yeah, we're going to dive into the Parkinsons Law, coming from Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker.
All right, everybody, it's Parkinson's Law here for the Banking Book Report episode. So once again, we've jumped into our favorite book. This is Becoming Your Own Banker, the 5th edition by R. Nelson Nash. And we are looking at the chapter he's named right here in part 2 called The Human Problems, Understanding Parkinson's Law. Jonah, what is Parkinson's Law?
Yeah, so Parkinson's Law is basically that work expands to meet the time envelope allowed. Which is fancy term for basically if you put a time requirement on something, you'll notice that the fulfillment of that thing that has the time requirement will fill the time allotted.
So it may have been something that only takes you 10 minutes, but if you gave yourself 10 hours to do it, that's what happens. All of that time gets filled up. So it reminds me of homework when I was a kid in school.
Sure.
Because I was never doing my homework when they gave us like a week to get it done. I was doing it in the 5 minutes between classes on the last day. And I got it done during that time.
The night before, the morning of, right? You're like, oh, I knew I had that thing to do.
Right.
Here I go.
But I never remembered. The problem with me was I never remembered until I was back in the context when it was important, aka back at school. That's when I remembered. That's right.
That's tough.
So anyway, that's how I went to school. But the example that Nelson uses in this book is the first example is talking about taxes. So taxes are April 15th, right? Last couple of years, coronavirus has been kind of crazy. But
they moved them around. Moved the extensions and moved the due dates and all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff. But generally we think about it, right, as a American condition to be April 15. And when do you actually get your taxes completed?
Oh, April 14.
April 14, right? That's why the post office is open till midnight on the final day, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, because we've all been there. Okay, so now how does this relate to building banking systems, creating them for cash, and helping people move forward? One of the things that we're here to talk about in the human problems episodes. One of those things is that work expands to meet the time envelope required. We said that, but a luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. Expenses rise to equal income. We'll talk about some of those things. So a luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. How does that kind of butt up against what we're trying to do?
Yeah, well, Nelson gives a pretty good example in his book, right? And he says that cars without air conditioning in them. He basically says if you remember back when you had to roll up or down the windows, right? And a lot of cars didn't come with air conditioning. But now you would never buy a car without air conditioning.
You couldn't even give it away.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's saying that thing that was once a luxury is now becomes a necessity. And what he's saying is a lot of people most people live their life like that. And so that's one of the reasons why you're saying we struggle or people struggle to get started with these banking systems is because, you're barely making it, maybe first job out of school, right? And you're barely making it and you've got your expenses low and you're keeping track of money, right? Then you get that raise and all of a sudden your expenses go right on up to equal the new amount of money that you have. Right. And then you get the new job or the promotion or whatever. Right. And then the expenses go right on up with it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all these things that were once a luxury to you are now a necessity.
Because you could never go backward.
You can never go backward. And then this has created the fact that now we don't have as much. We don't have enough. We don't have the things we do what we want to do. And it's because our things that were once a luxury are now a necessity, and our expenses have risen to match the income.
I love that idea you're talking about that Nelson mentions about the car, because that's definitely how I grew up. Not the cars that didn't have air conditioning. I'm talking about those broke down jalopies I'm driving at 21 years old that didn't have working air conditioners. And where we live in South Carolina, it was roll down your window and let the air circulate through your sleeve, right? And let it kind of puff up your shirt, because you'd have to have a driving shirt and then an arrival shirt because your driving shirt was soaking wet. So I can't go back to that, right? So obviously this is keeping us from being able to have the margin. That's really what Jonah was talking about. You're talking about the margin that we need to be able to create the system that's really going to get us out of the keeping up with the Joneses rat race wheel.
Right. Yeah. And so I related to that a lot when he's talking about expenses rising to match income, because you can, if you're not careful, if you're not paying attention, if you're not deliberate and particular about what you're spending your money on, you'll notice that, right? It's like, oh, hold on a second. Maybe like a lot of people like to do budgets, right? And they New Year's resolutions. A lot of people, that's one of the things you're
trying to get their money right.
Do a budget, right? And so you end up sticking. I mean, everybody knows about New Year's resolutions, right? You know what I mean? Is it March? Because they didn't make it that far. You know what I mean?
Right.
So January, February, you're writing all your things down for budgeting, right? You're paying attention. You spent $100 going out to eat, right? And then you look at that going out to eat bill in March or April, and it's $300, right?
Oh,
where did it come from?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, my expenses rose. I had it, so we did it.
It's right.
It happens so often. So I related to that a lot, and that's one of the things that I kind of try to refresh myself on every so often. Like, what am I actually spending money on, and write it down, and how much am I spending here? Because that's one of the things you have to fight. You got to fight Parkinson's Law in order to get ahead. So
yeah, for sure. See, when it really comes down to getting your banking system going, everybody, rule number one in so many different avenues of money, financial service, and learning is pay yourself first. Yep. And we talked about that a lot. Some of you have seen our 3-cup setup. Jump over to that video if you haven't, because we talk about we've got to get money in our system. So there's got to be some margin on some of your bills and some of your funtivities that you're doing with you and your family out there, because you've got to pay yourself first. Put it in the place that's going to compound uninterrupted forever. And that's right here inside the infinite banking concept system that we like to call the cash compound. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our episode today. So join us for another banking book report very soon, where we tackle the other aspects of getting this system going for you via Nelson Nash's book.